Okay, we're going to have a look at the way in which you can turn a black and white image into something much more spectacular. So it's going to be before and after. Okay, so we're going to actually paint onto a black and white image. So let's close down the finished article and do a little bit of preparation on this image. First, I'd like to say that this image is not a very high resolution because I've scanned it and brought it down in file size. So what you would normally do is be working on a much higher resolution image, presumably scanned, usually around at least 300, maybe more, and open in Photoshop, of course, and then go to maybe image adjustments, because what you probably don't want is anything left in there. So I'm going to go to desaturate to turn it into grayscale. I'm then going to go in and make some minor adjustments. So I could just tweak this image a little bit to make it a little bit more sort of contrasty, like so, and then possibly I may want to go in and perhaps just slightly sharpen using unsharp mask. So let's see what we have here. Don't want to make too much graininess, but then again it is an old photo and I would like it to look sharp. So let's have a on and off. There, that's sharpening. Okay, probably more sharpening than what I'd normally put on, but I'm going to say okay to it. Right, there is a secret to all of this, and the secret is simply everything you want to do is a new layer. So we'll start by putting in some flesh tones on the face. So we need to go and pick some flesh tones using the picker. So generally I tend to pick something around that. You could go for something more red, looking a bit more pinkish, and we'll say okay. And I'm going to start making a series of layers. So I'm going to drag this layer palette out, and the good idea at this stage would be to every time you make a layer, every time just name it straight away. So face. Okay, so I've picked a shade of pink, some sort of flesh tone. I'm going to use a brush, so I pick a brush, I go in, I might want to zoom in a touch to see what I'm doing and move that around with the hand tool. So resize the brush up a little bit, and I'm going to literally paint straight onto this new layer. So make sure you are on the new active layer. There we are. I might go for a soft edge brush, I think would be a better idea. Okay, now it's going to be fairly accurate with this. Okay, so it does take a little bit of time. There's easy ways to do this and there's hard ways. The hard way is to simply go around with the selection tool and then fill it in. That's a very hard way to do things. So I'm just going to go around fairly quickly. That's too much of a soft edge now. So I really need to make the brush smaller, which I will do. So the technique is to get this thing filled in as best as you can. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to fill in the eyes at all. I'm going to just go around the eyelids. I want to try and leave the whites of the eyes as white as possible. Okay, so bear with me, it won't take too long. Once I get the details around the eyes and the mouth, and then it's just filling in after that. go around the mouth. So you could zoom in a lot more than this, spend a bit more time, being a bit more accurate would help. But this is just to give you a good overview of how to actually achieve these effects. And of course this is how they probably used to do it. Right, one trick I've learned is that by holding down the shift key you can draw straight lines. So if I wanted to draw a straight line from here straight across, I would hold down the shift key and then just click and I draw a straight line. So I've learned to do that now it comes in handy because I can do a click, hold down the shift key and actually go round an area in small increments just to fill that area in. And sometimes that's easier than trying to do it with the mouse freehand, because if you slip then you've only got to undo. Got slightly more control this way sometimes. Depends on the image. Depends whether you've got a shaky hand that day. Right, so that's more or less got the outline done. Just make the brush a little bit larger. I'm going to turn the flow from 69 to 100 because I'm having to do more than one click. I just want to get in and now fill as much in as I can. So I'm literally painting over, completely over, trying to obliterate as much as I can. And before I learned how to do this properly, I assumed that all you had to do then was to just reduce the opacity of this and reveal a combination of the new fleshy coloured layer and the actual image behind. And to a certain extent it worked, until I was browsing the web and came across a more professional tutorial. So that's that filled in. As I say, I used to think that the way to do this was then just to go to the opacity control on that layer and bring it down until you got something that looked like that. And I thought, oh, that'll do nicely. But there is a much better way, a much more efficient way, and the secret to all of this is, as I say, make a new layer for everything that you create, a new layer, and it's also to change this blend mode here from normal, generally, but you can experiment with others, generally from normal down to this one, second from the bottom, colour. And the blend mode then, you see that it pulls more of the detail from behind. It does tend to also not look the way you intended it to look, looking a very much bronzy looking now. So, but knowing that, and also the fact that straight away you could always still turn the opacity down, and if it looks okay, it looks okay. But if it still looks a bit on the red side or whatever, if you know for some reason it doesn't look right, then just simply go into Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and by moving this hue slider around, you can change this overall look of that layer. So I'm going to go to make it more red, or certainly don't want any greens in it, do I? Could make it red. Could turn down the saturation, of course. Very rarely use lightness, very rarely, because it just tends to not work the way you expect it to work. So I would generally go to something like that and control the brightness with the opacity more than anything else. So that's it on full. Usually find that you have to come down a lot more than what you think. You think, you know, it's looking good, I'll just come down, but eventually you will go down and down and down and think, well, you know, you'll be around the half the opacity, 50%, maybe less than that. Okay, so we'll say that looks okay now for the face. We'll leave it at that. Make a new layer, and we'll call this one lips. Choose a colour. Let's go for something very, very vibrantly red. Let's zoom in a bit more. Let's reduce the brush size. And if we've gone over on anything, we can try and see if it makes any difference, see if it looks wrong, or we could go back to the layer where we've overlapped and just use the eraser to take away whatever we think is wrong. So obviously this is going to look absolutely terribly too bright. Okay. And best to zoom out again to see what it's going to look like. Once again, change from normal blend mode down to colour. That brings back the grayscale behind it of the lips, and then simply go down with opacity until you think it looks about right. When you do, remember you can always go back to these, so work fairly quickly. Next layer, let's call this cheeks, and we could leave that red if we want. This time bigger brush, hardly any flow at all. Let's go down to 12%, something like that. So with a brush about that size, painting in red on a new layer, just a little bit. That was one click of hardly anything at all. That was okay. Let's do 2 clicks. So I'll just match this side up with a second click. Okay. And once again, we could, if we think it still looks okay, you could simply just reduce the opacity of that and not go down to the blend mode, the colour blend mode, because that tends to just lose it a bit. So sometimes you might want to apply the blend mode. That's 100%. It's hardly noticeable. Let's turn it back to normal and then just reduce the opacity. So sometimes blend mode is absolutely fantastic, and sometimes you may think, well, I don't need it. And you might want to do, maybe looking at that, you might want to independently do the left cheek and then the right cheek. So because I feel that that's looking too red just there. Anyway, you continue on, you do the hair, you do the eyes, you do the dress, you do any jewellery, whatever. Notice what I have forgotten to do, and I forget this every time. Did the face but forgot to do the arm. So let's see if we can get back to the face. Let's try this. Let's go to the sort of a colour picker, and let's pick a colour from there, which is not what we wanted, but we'll give it a go. So we've picked a colour directly from there. Let's see if this works. Bet it doesn't. So I should be painting with that. Oh well, the opacity is down. I'm just having to paint it that little bit more. It's not particularly working well. I might have to go back and make a new layer that simply says arm. So if I've missed that opportunity, then yeah, I think I'm going to have to go make a new one and call it arm. I do this every time usually. I forget to look around the picture, or you've zoomed in and then you forget there's an arm there. So once again, I'll go in and treat this as a whole new, start with that. So in there, normal, just paint over. Why isn't it working? Oh, it is. It's just that I've got the, oh, of course, I've got the flow turned down, haven't I, on that other. Right, this is a bit on the rough side now. Might just go in with the eraser tool and take away some of that overspill, shall I call it, there, down the side of the arm. There we go, that's probably near enough. Change the blend mode to colour, and turn the opacity down. Okay, should have done that the first time. However, you can see how it's heading, you can see the technique. The secret is new layers, named preferably, so you know where you are and what's on each layer, and then simply change the blend mode and just see how things look. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for now. Come back, I'll show you the completed version with all the layers, and we'll have a look at each, well, not every layer, but we'll have a look at how it sort of builds, how it actually built up. Okay, see you then.